it turns out I actually have a lot of 4-star books on my February wrap-up, so I'm actually really keen to go through it without ranting a lot for once. Hi guys, this is Jean from Happy Indulgence and I'm here today for my February wrap-up. February was a super busy month, but it was also a really good one. I got to finish this massive project that I've been working on at work and it was really great to finally see that come to fruition. The other thing is that I also got to see the Aladdin musical with my husband and it was such a wonderful musical. I love the music, I love the cast, I love the set, and Genie is so completely hilarious. If you do get the chance to see the Aladdin musical, I really recommend it because it's just a lot of fun and it's just a really great night out. This week I also got to go to the Penguin Teen Showcase and I also got to meet Fleur Ferris, who is a Aussie YA author of thriller books, and she's just so lovely and a lovely support to the book blogging community and the Aussie YA community. So I was really glad to finally meet her and get my book signed. I also got to meet Jodie McAllister, which is a paranormal romance author of Valentine and Ironheart, and it was lovely to hear from her as well. And we also got to watch Love, Simon, which is the cutest movie ever. I absolutely enjoyed it because I love Simon versus the Homo sapiens agenda. I thought it was completely adorable. It stayed really true to the tone of the book and it was just light and happy, and I thought all the characters did really well and they were completely adorable as well. So I'll link you guys to my original review to the book down below on my blog, and yeah, that was pretty much what happened in February. So during February I read 7 books. There were a lot of the books that I really enjoyed, so I was really glad to find some books that I really loved, and I can't wait to go through them all with you. So yeah, let's just get started. So the first book I picked up and loved was Raelia by Lynette Noni, and this is the second book in the Midorian Chronicles series. I think we're up to 4 books of the series already, but I picked this up because a lot of my friends have been raving about it, and I also went to Lynette Noni's Grey Veil launch, which I'll link up above, and lots of people really love this series. I've already read Akane, which is the first book in the series, but I guess that was a 3-star read for me, but oh my gosh. Now after reading Raelia, I totally know why people rave about it, because it's basically about a girl called Alex. She's in the human world, but then she stumbles upon this magical world called Midora, and in Midora she joins Akane Academy, which is like a magical school where she has to learn skills of combat, of archery, skills to train her magical gift. In this one she also joins the SAS class, which is stealth and subterfuge, I think that is. But in Raelia you get to see a lot of Alex's training and the banter. At one point in the book she also visits Raelia, which is where one of the Midorian courts are, and she meets a lot of Midorian warriors, and they were really interesting because all the descriptions of the world was so fantastic. It was really detailed. I could vividly picture this world in my head, and I love the fight scenes and the combat scenes. They were written really well, action-packed, and I loved some of the scenes in the book, in particular the banter that she shares with some of her best friends. And then they also get to do an undercover mission as well with the rest of her students in the SAS class, and I really enjoyed that as well. There is so much to love in this series. It's just filled with magic, filled with action. It has a really strong sense of character. She puts her friendships and her loyalties at the top of her chart. And of course there's some sexy Midorian warriors as well. So I mean, I really enjoyed this series and I can't wait to read the rest of the books next month. So yes, this is Raelia by Lynette Noni. I gave this 5 stars. Next book I read and loved is Thunderhead by Neal Shusterman, and this is the second book in the Arc of the Scythe series. I got this arc from the author a few months ago and it's signed, which I'm super lucky about. But basically this series is set in a futuristic dystopian world where technology has advanced so far and human evolution has advanced so far that they basically don't get diseases and they don't die. And the only way that you can control the population is with these scythes, and scythes operate above the law. They pretty much operate like Grim Reapers, and 2 of these characters that it follows is Rowan and Citra. In the first book, Scythe, they're both apprentices and they're both pitted against each other to become a fully fledged Scythe. But in Thunderhead, basically that's happened already and we get to see how they carve out a name for themselves. I really enjoyed this book, and I love this series because it's such an intelligent way of exploring evolution and human technology, and it also builds up a perfect AI ruler called the Thunderhead. It explores a lot of philosophical concepts, like it talks about life and death and of having a higher purpose, and also the morality when it comes to a godlike person, which is pretty much a Thunderhead. And I love the technology that's explored in here. And there's also this really great new character called Grayson Tolliver as well. He basically becomes an unsavory, which are pretty much people who have been blacked out by the Thunderhead, who have basically voided their protection for doing something or rather. So it's all really interesting. There's suspense in here. There's a lot of philosophy. There's a lot of action. It's really interesting seeing what becomes of the characters and how they carve out a name for themselves. And yeah, just how the Thunderhead and Grayson Tolliver, how all it ties in towards the end. It's a bit of a slow moving series, but I really love the philosophy in here, so I gave Thunderhead 5 stars. Another book I read and loved is Reign the Earth by A.C. Gawkin. And oh my gosh guys, I'm really glad I was warned about the trigger warnings in this book, and because reading the blurb really does not highlight the level of abuse that happens in this book. So this book contains the following trigger warnings. There's emotional abuse, there's domestic abuse, there's sexual abuse, there's rape, there's childbirth concerns. Oh my gosh, it goes into so many adult themes, and I really think it's important to be aware of those before going into the book. So basically it's about this girl from the desert called Raelia, and she's a princess, and she gets betrothed and married off to a ruler of the Bone Lands called Calix. Calix is a really complex and deep character. He bears the weight of the world on his shoulders as a ruler, and he makes some really hard decisions. Raelia coming in, she comes across as a really passive character, but as you get to know her, you find out that her strength is in a lot of soft skills, like, you know, building a connection with others, valuing life, valuing loyalty. And it's really important that to see heroines of this nature show their true strength in the novel, and I really believe this is her story of breaking through that oppression, of building a connection with others and showing how you can overcome, you know, physical abuse and domestic abuse. And it was such an important story. I cried for a full 10 minutes after reading this, because there's something to be said of, you know, cases of domestic abuse and of wondering why the female stays there, and it's easy to regard her as weak, but reading the story will really make you understand how it's not always easy. And I love that about Raelia. Even though she was a softer kind of heroine, she showed her real strength towards the end of the book. It's a really difficult book to read because of all those themes, but if you stick with it, oh my gosh, it gets so good towards the end, and it's just a really beautiful story. So I gave this one 4 stars. Another book that I read and loved is American Panda by Gloria Chow, and I'll link you guys to the discussion review that we had below at Happy Indulgence. American Panda is a book that we were all really looking forward to this year, because it's an own voices read about a Taiwanese American girl who struggles against her parental pressures of pushing her to become a doctor, to marry someone who's Chinese and successful, and it goes into all the family dynamics and into what it is to become a second generation immigrant, and I thought it was a really important book. The book was such a refreshing read that pulled me out of my reading slump. I absolutely love the humour in it. It's a bit of a dry humour. There's some over-the-top scenes in here, and you're wondering, is that actually true? But the way that it approaches the social commentary when it comes to Asian stereotypes and what it is to operate against traditional strict Asian parents, I felt like it captured that really, really well. The pressure that May is put through by her family to become a doctor is a bit too overwhelming, and the way that they're constantly on top of her about studying and about eating. My parents are exactly the same way. At one point they give her an ultimatum and cut her off. Oh my gosh, the number of times that I've heard of this happening to some of my friends, to their siblings, because, you know, they rebelled against the parents in a certain way. I mean, it's actually realistic. This is actually people's real lives. There are some scenes in there that had my eyebrows raised, like a certain wedding scene, but I just think it's such such a relatable book for those of Asian descent and even those who have migrated from another culture, and it really goes into those family values really well. I mean, May and her mother have this really interesting dynamic. Her mother's always nagging her, always on top of her, but I found like her explored that really well. It just shows how your family have pretty much become your project after you've moved from another country as well. And I loved how she seeked out her own brother as well, who is pretty much the only person who knows how her family can kind of feel stifling sometimes. So I really enjoyed American Panda and I gave it 4 stars. I read this really quickly. Is Wires and Nerve Volume 2 Gone Rogue by Marissa Meyer. And this is the end of the duology. This is actually a graphic novel and it's illustrated by Gilpin. If you guys have read the Lunar Chronicles, it goes through what happens after the end of winter. It's pretty much Eco's story and how she's sent as an emissary on Earth to keep the peace between the wolf soldiers. I really enjoy this series. It's a really great chunky read, which I really loved, and it goes through each and every one of the characters from Wolf, Scarlet, Cinder and Kai. It was just filled with action and I just find that this series just really puts a smile on my face. I did find that there wasn't much of Carswell Thorne or of Cress. It was basically a wolf story. But if you really enjoyed those characters, it's just a fun read, especially if you love the Lunar Chronicles. So I gave this one 4 stars as well. Another book that I read and loved this month is Stalking Jack the Ripper by Kerri Maniscalto. And I actually listened to this one on audiobook before acquiring the hardback. I really enjoyed this book. It's set in the 1800s and it's about a girl called Audrey Rose who's a high society woman who enjoys an unlikely, unfeminist hobby, and that is forensic science. So when you first meet her, she's got her arms deep in a corpse and it's really bloody. I just love how feminist the voice of Audrey was. She's constantly talking about how oppressed women are in the society, how they're just expected to get married to other men and they pretty much can't do anything. Her dad has an iron hold on her. He's really strict, won't let her date, won't let her, talk to boys, but somehow she dresses as a boy to go out and visit these corpses and these bloody murder scenes behind his back, and I love that about her. There's also an apprentice under her uncle, which is called Thomas Cresswell, and they have the best flirty banter that I've ever read. I mean, he's really cheeky, he's really cocky and arrogant and constantly teasing her, and she's always like, "Oh, that is so preposterous." But it's really funny because you can tell that she kind of enjoys it because she blushes a lot. And yeah, so basically together, they get together to solve this mystery of who Jack the Ripper is, because there's all these bloody murders that are happening, and yeah, they pretty much bond over that. So it's really interesting. I love the character voices here. I love the banter. It's a great debut, and after listening to it, I actually hopped on and ordered Hunting Prince Dracula. So that's how much I enjoyed this book. It wasn't without its issues though. I found that sometimes the way Audrey kept on commenting about high society women and about the boundaries that they had, it kind of took you out of the story, because it's like, aren't you a high society woman? And she keeps on talking about how she's not like other girls, and that theme was so strong in this book that it kind of knocks you over the head with it. But anyway, I liked the brotherly and sisterly relationship in here and how it explores different family dynamics as well. So I gave this one 4 stars and I'm really looking forward to the next book. So one of the last books that I'm going to talk about is Convergence by Marita Smith, and this is actually a debut Aussie YA book that I haven't heard too much of. I really wanted to pick this up because it's a sci-fi read. It's about a scientist who wants to track down 3 teenagers who are test subjects with this rare gene where they're able to communicate with animals. And there's also some bisexual rep in here, which I thought was important. But oh my gosh guys, reading this book, it was so difficult to get into, and I actually ended up skim reading it because it switches from character to character. I think there ended up being 13 main character perspectives, and it switches from paragraph to paragraph, and I found like it was really confusing and it was really difficult to follow. I really like the animal influences in here, but by the end of the book, I really could not tell you what happened because it was just such a confusing read that was all over the place. So I ended up giving this 1 star. I'm actually really disappointed because I love sci-fi and supporting Aussie authors, but I just found like it was really hard to read. These are all the books that I read during the month of February. If you enjoyed this video and you enjoyed these thoughts on them, please give me a thumbs up and leave a comment down below if you have any questions or if you agree or disagree with my thoughts and comments. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.